Thank you very much, President Rob Selby, and also to Tim Sultan, who couldn't be here with us, but he reached out to me for this opportunity. And thank you all, the Democrats of Greater Tucson, for this opportunity to share with you the story of Mexican American Studies in TUSD, and from my perspective as a teacher within the program. This is my first time at a luncheon, so I wrote a pretty formal speech, but afterwards I hope to kind of kick back with you and answer any of your questions. But I was a little nervy, so I hope you forgive that. And I'm a little, you know, I'm a word guy, so I like to do that as an English teacher. So anyway, so without further ado, I'd also like to thank the Tohono O'odham Nation for allowing us to be guests upon their land this afternoon, and it is a great honor to be with you all. In Lakesh, tú eres mi otro yo. You are my other me. Si te hago daño a ti, if I do harm to you, me hago daño a mí mismo. I do harm to myself. Si te amo y respeto, if I love and respect you, me amo y respeto yo. I love and respect myself. For the last 5 years, my classes have all begun in this fashion. In Lakesh is a Mayan phrase that encapsulated the spirit of our classes and our development as better scholars and as better people. It is a way of reminding each of us in the classroom the responsibility we have to each other as we continue to develop as a complete human being. It was our one and only rule. After all, school cannot simply be about academic content. Think back for a moment to your own favorite school experiences and teachers. I'll wait a little bit. I know I'm trying to get some ganas in my beard, so it takes a little while to go back. I bet there was an immense amount of joy in those memories if you think back right now. I hope there's a smile across your face as you remember what it was like to be in that special place, learning with the lovely people around you. Perhaps it was the only spot you felt inspired, happy, safe, or even loved. I also bet that you're not thinking about the awesome classroom or school rules. In fact, I would venture to guess that you're not thinking about how cool the bathroom pass was. Oh, and if your mind right now is wandering into your high school crushes, I need you to exercise a little discipline, okay? And come back to the room. I don't need you trolling on Facebook, so don't wait on your phones to try to find out what that so-and-so's up to. We got more to cover today. Your favorite memories of school. That was similar to what the principal of In Lakesh meant to us in our Mexican American Studies classes and the spirit of our classrooms. It was our daily reminder, it was a daily reminder of how we should embrace the world. This became supremely important as our classrooms became battlefields for a political agenda by a handful of opportunists in Phoenix, namely Tom Horn and John Huppertal. Well, that got the right reaction. It is difficult to truly relate to you how devastating the attacks from these powerful men and a handful of individuals dedicated to their bidding were upon the classroom climate, our disposition and energy, and the spirit of safety and love that our classes always created. Suffice it to say that it was enormous. It took our collective will to continue our academic growth. It took unimaginable strength to silence the obstacles and distraction used by these men and their operatives to derail the academic triumphs of our students, their personal achievement, collective joy, and the focus on their future, their dreams. Think of yourself at 16 or 17. Could any of us have been able to do the same? Could any of us been able to achieve academic success as other teachers or family members peppered us with questions about the alleged racist content of our classes? Could you have continued to smile and laugh with your friends while overhearing that you and your teachers were hateful people? That you were the victim of some type of experiment, some cult? Could you have perceived while the local media sanctimoniously characterized you as a horrible person in an awful class? I do not think I could have, but our students surely did. They were the embodiment of In Lakesh. And because they finally found a place in school where they felt they were of equal value to any other student. And they loved it. They loved to read and write. They loved to learn. I'm going to admit something to you right now that may be shocking, something really intensely controversial. So don't tell anybody, right? Perhaps it'll change your perception of us and who we are forever. Are you ready? We were and still are a bunch of Chicana and Chicano nerds. That's right, nerd geeks. We love to learn, to read, all that stuff. There, I said it. All right, you can go on and get on the blogosphere, tell everybody we're nerds. As studies have shown, MAS and TUSD was the setting for one of the most successful educational programs for Latino students in the history of our country. Still, some naysayers and skeptics have done their best to seem logical and measured in their criticism of our program and our academic results, while actively aligning themselves with folks who desperately sought the end of our program due to their own prejudices and discriminatory agenda. After all, one must call into question the objectivity of someone who readily partners with a person that says to a national audience, and I quote, "Well, if there's no more white people in the world, then okay, you can do what you want." End quote. Especially with such strong evidence as hearsay. This is why the students were so devastated by the thought of losing their classes or seeing their books taken from them. Effective education must inspire us to be better human beings while we engage in becoming more learned and educated people. That is what we had until January 10th, 2012. And now, we are gone. The program has been destroyed, and we are left to ask, what now? Before we embark upon that path, I feel it's necessary to spend a few moments about the book banning and the events of the past semester. After the governing board suspended our program, thus eliminating Mexican American Studies and Latino Literature classes, we were told by our site administrators that we were unable to use any curriculum that we had designed for our MAS classes, in addition to any curriculum designed by other MAS personnel. So anything that we had created, and we created all of our class content. We didn't borrow that or find it in the textbook. There are no such things if you teach Mexican American Studies and teach Chicano literature. And we couldn't share with each other either. We couldn't be that clever. Everything that had been created by us, all of our intellectual property, all of our hard work over a decade and more are gone. During these, this was not only a verbal direction, but written as well. And during these meetings, we were also informed that certain textbooks, forbidden texts, if you will, were to be collected and sent to a TUSD warehouse. There are many people that have told us that this was not a book banning. In fact, at the Tucson Festival of Books, a few of my students were chastised by adults to stop lying and that the books were not banned. This was an awful experience for them as they attempted to engage fellow Tucsonans in a constructive dialogue about the censoring of their academic freedom. Unfortunately, TUSD actively contributed to this misinformation through press releases that did not fully explain the nuances of the direction that we, the teachers of MAS, had been given. To clarify, TUSD banned us, the teachers of MAS, from using books along with boxing certain titles and storing them in a warehouse. Yes, they did that too. This was the subtle difference that led to my students being told they were liars. We are a political audience and are fully aware of the term spin, and that is simply what was happening. The fact that I was banned from my own curriculum, my own voice, my own expertise as a teacher led to the reality that I could not use or teach the works such as The Devil's Highway by Luis Alberto Urrea, Martin Luther King Jr.'s Beyond Vietnam speech, or even The Tempest by William Shakespeare. These were all pivotal works in my senior Latino literature class, and any other teacher in our school district was free to use them. But not we happy few MAS teachers. That's a literary reference, and I'll owe you a bag of M&Ms if you got it. Got to tell me how.
Henry V.
Instead, we were asked to begin anew, and were subjected to start teaching works that we were completely unfamiliar with from the district-adopted textbooks. There was a clear feeling by teachers and administrators alike that the state would send personnel to monitor our compliance, and we were encouraged to steer clear of content that addressed race, ethnicity, and class, a near impossible task when you are an American literature teacher. And the state did come. However, before the state entered my classroom in April, I had been monitored by my own site administration at Tucson High 3 times. During these visits, the administrators stayed for at least 30 minutes and diligently produced a script of all what they heard and saw. It's important to note that no TUSD or site administrator, however, visited our classrooms past early February to address the pain that the students were feeling, thus abandoning them in a sense, and leaving us all alone to work through this together. They only came to monitor. Of all the horror stories, that ranks amongst the highest. As Dr. King stated in his amazing speech, Beyond Vietnam, which I'm not allowed to teach, silence is betrayal. But I digress. The day the state visited, I had a guest, Damian Carvajal, from the class of 2011, and he had taken some precious personal leave time from the Air Force to visit his old teacher. He was worried about me, since he had been following the news of the fate of his beloved classes from basic training and in his more permanent position in Colorado. After having a difficult time at the Tucson High gate trying to obtain permission to visit, I told him he should wear his uniform. He says, not today. He's on leave. He eventually had to call me so I could grease the wheels for him to come into the classroom. Damien made his way to my room, and after a quick Chicano handshake y abrazo, he asked me how I was doing. I told him that things were tough, that the students were deeply impacted and hurt, but we were doing our best. I told Damien to hang back and let me get class started, and that we could catch up later if he had the time. He said that he couldn't imagine any other space he would rather be than our classroom and for me to take my time. Ironically, the state monitors entered my room 1 minute after I told my first period class and Damien at my desk that we could expect them to drop in next week. Since this week was Ames testing for middle school, then surely the state wouldn't want to distract students during such an important week. The monitors came into our room unannounced, and I asked my students to welcome them with a good morning salutation, which is custom for all visitors to our space. But upon their entrance, Damien stood up and told me that he was leaving, and that he knew this wasn't a good time to visit. 10 minutes later, the state monitors, for my compliance, exited too. I feel this is an important story on a number of levels. I haven't told it very often either. I think I just told it to my wife for the first time when I was rehearsing this yesterday. But it's important on a number of levels, because this anecdote shows us clearly what this is all about. First, John Huppenthal and some other voices within the state and our own community derided the Cambium audit commissioned by Huppenthal and the Arizona Department of Education, an audit which lauded our program. They condemned it due to the lack of time that the auditors spent in our classrooms, 30 minutes. However, the compliance monitors from his office spent 2/3 less time than the Cambium auditor. And during their brief visit, they spent a majority of the time looking at the books on my shelf and the posters on the wall. And no notes were provided from the state compliance monitors to any of the teachers about what they observed. So what is this really about? It certainly wasn't about my teaching. Secondly, State Superintendent Huppenthal's crusade to end our classes chased away a member of the Air Force from my classroom, someone willing and able to fight for our country, and someone who loved his Mexican-American studies and Latino literature experiences. And yes, he might even love his teacher también. I am very proud of him. I worry for his safety, and I love him. My students and I have been criticized for such sentiments and dedication to one another by right-wing bloggers, and even in a kangaroo court that was the TUSD appeal of Mr. Huppenthal's findings And guess what? I don't care. You see, this is who we are and why we struggle so passionately to defend our right to live and learn. I have lost students in the war on foreign soil. I have lost students to the war on the street. I have lost students to prison. My former students are as diverse as we are as a people. They are soldiers, scholars, parents, community organizers, artists, activists, and even inmates. Brilliant young people who are the salt of the earth. They are the very best among us. Yet now in the space where they grew into lovely young people willing to sacrifice possible arrest through a protest so that their younger siblings or children could learn about their history and stories of their ancestors, or to give the ultimate sacrifice for our nation, the space where they all grew together is gone. And it didn't have to be that way. If those of us in this room, in our community, were all working together against the monsters in Phoenix that even now are trying to dehumanize our gay brothers and sisters by ripping away benefits from their domestic partners. My fellow Democrats, let us all learn from this American tragedy and the academic trauma that was perpetrated on our young people and promise each other never again. This is the background and context for what my colleagues and I have dedicated ourselves to do in response to losing our program through the events of Tucson Freedom Summer. We are focused on the future and not the past, a commitment to a broader struggle for human rights, social justice through education, civic engagement, and the arts. Galvanized by the discriminatory and dehumanizing legislation targeting the Latino community in our state, especially the dismantling of Mexican American Studies program in SB 1070, artists, activists, community organizers, and educators throughout the nation have formed a collective effort to empower alienated and marginalized communities towards self-determination. We will be doing this through community outreach, and we already have. This summer, we're halfway through July of what we call Tucson Freedom Summer, where we're doing a bunch of outreach, educational events that I'll detail in a second. The idea behind such things like last night, we had our second Sunday community encuentro. They're focused on critical education issues for our Tucson families, such as bilingual education, culturally responsive pedagogy, and parent advocacy and student agency. With the pending unitary status plan that will affect every QSC student from kindergarten through graduation, we believe it's necessary to begin a dialogue with all who will be affected. Quality educators have donated their time to share their expertise at our free community forums, and the response has been excellent. Yesterday we had one during the storm. We had 50 people that made it to the John Valenzuela Youth Center in that storm, not just to come here. Sal Galadon, he's an amazing, if you don't know Sal Galadon, he's an amazing educator. But Sal was giving a talk on bilingual education, the history of it, and the future. I was really impressed by the community dedication to coming and learning. It's a beautiful thing. As Tucson Freedom Summer continues through July, we invite any and all of you to have a house meeting or to financially contribute to our sustainability. To clarify, we are not candidate-based, we are issue-based. After our experiences this past semester, it became painfully clear that we must educate, organize, and mobilize our community to protect quality programs in order to protect the academic goals and dreams of our youth. As Malcolm X once said, you don't need a filibuster, you need action. This also gives an opportunity to escape from false narratives and accusations that we are narrowly focused on the issue of Mexican American Studies. Of course, we intimately have seen the benefits and values of our classes, but we were equally frustrated that the success of our program was never allowed to fully blossom in USD, so that many other students could develop an academic identity. We understand how large our district is and how many students need the type of support, innovation, and rigorous educational experience our students once had. We believe this gives us an opportunity to re-engage with Tucson without any stigma of self-interest. It has never been about us. It is about what is right for our children and families. On a related note, although we are moving forward, the legal challenge of the law that was used to end our classes is still in federal court. We are awaiting news from Judge Awas Tashima on our motion of summary judgment that would avoid the law as unconstitutional. Our hearing took place on March 19th, and we were fortunate enough to have Attorney General Horn argue the case for the saint, an act of kindness to our program. Second only to Superintendent Hupenthal's glowing audit of our program. However, the legal system works slowly, my friends, so we have no idea when Judge Tashima will rule, but we are cautiously optimistic and anxiously awaiting his ruling. As the diligence of our legal team and teachers suggests, we are not simply going to limp away or go quietly. There is too much at stake. I'd like to conclude today by giving you all a little homework, however. It's what teachers tend to do after all, and I don't want to hear any belly aching about it being summertime. Your homework assignment is twofold. First, I would like to challenge anyone who may have had misgivings about MAS or even outright negativity to sit down with us and talk it out in a place of your choosing where you feel comfortable to ask the questions that you need to ask. I'm confident that we will be able to leave that meeting with a deeper understanding of the issue and each other. For our supporters, we ask the same of you. Invite some friends to a house meeting where we can begin building toward a better future for our youth and their education. Let us return to the concept of inakesh. You are my other me. Inakesh is not the suspension of critical thought or absolution of sin. It is an ethic that emphasizes our common humanity. I know we may not all agree on everything in this room, but surely we can be unified in our perspective of Hupethal and Horn. For their egregious actions against teachers, against an effective academic program, against our children, surely we must stand firm and condemn them forever and promise each other never again. We must come together. And the next assignment is a bit more difficult. As odd as this is to say, given the experiences that we have faced the past 6 years and the scars we've endured from the likes of Horn and Hupethal, I believe we all have been blessed to live through this time of unparalleled courage that has been on display in Tucson. Courage that we have seen in the actions of students to not only protect the class they love, but to assert the human value of their history and culture. Against the face of a tidal wave toward Chicanos and Latinos in Arizona. I have seen my students sit down with USD board members, superintendents, and Mr. Hupethal himself and engage in respectful and critical dialogue with unflappable grace. I have seen these older and much more powerful people stunned and at a loss for words when attempting to respond to the reasoned and morally just positions detailed by our youth. And I have seen these same young people suffer personal and political losses as their arguments and pleas were ignored, courageously refused to submit, refused to be bullied, refused to be victims, and I have seen them move the world. An elder in our community recently referenced another inspiring generation of youth. In his essay, Salomon Valdenegro describes the parallel between the youth of today and the civil rights movement. Some of you may remember those days, right?
Yeah.
He recognized in the following fashion, and I quote, "As we were at their age, these young people are loyal to ideas, to principles, to ideals, not to political parties or to political hacks. Remember how we reacted when we were these young people, with whom the Democratic Party ignored and demonized? And in those marches, those picket lines, those police cars we were taken to jail in, we vowed that we would set an example for our children and grandchildren by standing up against injustice wherever and whenever we encountered it, even if the perpetrators of the injustice were of our own ethnicity, our own religion, our own political affiliation, and that we would never become or be co-opted by the political establishment," end quote. We must find the courage as individuals and as a party to follow their lead, and I believe we can. This is the party of civil rights, of human rights. This is the party of public education, of social justice, the party that Salomon Valdenegro spoke of, the party with a moral compass and soul toward all human beings, the party of King, Chavez, Jackson, Huerta, of Goodman, Schwerner, Cheney. And as we learn from those heroes, it is one thing to say that we are anti-bullying, but it is another thing entirely to stand up to the bullies with action, even if there is a significant price to pay. It is the courage of Sean Arce, the former director of Mexican American Studies. Who refused to comply with injustice toward our youth, toward the beautiful history and culture of Mexican Americans, even if it meant the loss of his job. It is the courage of Winona Bonali Baldenegro, who refuses to use corporate monies in her quest to be the first Native American woman to be elected Congress. It is the courage of Judy Burns and Adelita Grijalva, who did not cower in the face of unprecedented and likely unconstitutional interference by the state and stood by our program and classes. Strong who headed that acted in defense of what was indeed working best for children in our district. It is the courage of the dreamers who put their very livelihood and residency in this country on the line to assert their love for our country and their role as Americans. Courage so strong that it inspired our president to action. Simply because you are born in America does not mean you are a great American. As Americans, as Democrats, we must all be deeply involved in the construction of a better Tucson, a better country through civic engagement. We must contribute to this democratic experience in a sincere and emphatic way through an exercise of critical thought and a patient ear to listen to each other. And in the cases of clear injustice, inequality, or the stripping of human and civil rights, being an American means you must act upon your convictions. And that is all of our homework. To exemplify courage in our actions, both personal and political, as we move forward today. Because courage in the face of injustice will inspire not only our youth, but all cynical and disengaged Americans to act and to engage in building a better country. Let us walk this path together. Thank you for the opportunity to share our story with you today. It's been an honor.